What came before God? Not only is this an incredibly common question, but it might be something that stumped you in the past. Now, if that's you, or if you have this question, you're going to leave this video thinking that this question is actually pretty silly. Because we're going to answer this question from the perspective of an 8-year-old. In the city of Kufa, there's a young man by the name of Abu Hanifa who is 8 years old. That's not his real name, that's actually a nickname, but this is what he's most commonly known by. So he just helps his father out at the fabric store, and one day a missionary comes into town and he sets up shop in the market and he has a little crate. And this man starts calling out to the people and he says, "Oh people, I have 3 questions for you. Number 1, what came before God? Number 2, what direction is God facing? And number 3, what is God doing right now?" So he does this and he gets the standard missionary treatment, which is to be completely ignored. Now, when you go to the marketplace, you're not trying to talk philosophy. You're trying to buy your groceries, get some clothes, hang out, eat some food. So most of the people, they do ignore him. But like any society, there are people who think that they can discuss this and they go and they engage this man. And he is a missionary, so he obviously has responses prepared for days. It's like when those professionals go on college campuses and they prepare all these arguments and then they debate with people who are totally unprepared. This has actually been happening for thousands of years. Now, Abu Hanifa gets really annoyed eventually, and he realizes that this guy is bad news and he needs to be put in his place. So as this 8-year-old child, he goes up to the missionary and he says, "I got the answer to all of your questions." Now the missionary is obviously probably not taking him super seriously. After all, he's an 8-year-old. But he humors him anyways and he says, "What are the answers?" Abu Hanifa does something really smart. He knows that this man is here to argue. So instead of answering his questions at face value, he makes him answer his own questions. He said, "Well, for your first question, what comes before God? I have a question for you." He said, "Okay, shoot. What's your question?" He said, "What comes before 10? And, the missionary is somewhat puzzled because it doesn't really seem related to the topic at hand. But he says 9, right? 9 is before 10. He says, "Well, what is before 9? It's 8. And you see where this is going. He says, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. When he gets to 1, Abu Hanifa asks him, "What comes before 1? Now this is the year 707 AD. The society does not have the concept of 0. So the missionary, he says, "Well, nothing comes before 1. And so Abu Hanifa, he says, "Well, God is 1. Nothing is before him." Very simple. Now, if you're a skeptic like myself and you like to poke holes at things, you might be saying, "Well, this is just ignorance, right? Because we do have 0 now and we have negative numbers." This argument doesn't really hold up. But if we were to turn these numbers into cardinal numbers, for example, let's say you have a to-do list for the day. And the first item on your to-do list is, "Let me clean my room." Now, if someone asks you, "Well, what's before that?" You say, "Well, nothing is before that because this is the first item." And the first item, by default, has nothing before it. So God, by default, is the first. This is in the definition of God. Nothing comes before that. The second question he asked is, what direction is God facing? Again, Abu Hanifa, he asks him a question. He says, what direction does the light of a candle face? When you light a candle, where is the light going? North, south, east, west, what? And he says, well, it doesn't really go in a specific direction. It simply spreads. And Abu Hanifa, he says, well, God is the light of the heavens and the earth. This is a verse from the Quran. He does not exist in a single direction. Rather, he is omnipresent. And for your third question, what is God doing right now? For this, I have a condition. He says, what's your condition? He says, I need to stand where you're standing. Give me the stage, give me the mic, and then I'll answer the question. You've had your chance. So he says, okay, that's fair. Abu Hanifa, he stands in the box and he says in a louder voice so everyone can hear him, as for your third question, what is God doing right now? He is humiliating this man at my hands. What a beautiful set of responses by Abu Hanifa. Keep in mind this guy's an 8-year-old. But look at what he did, right? He made him answer his own questions. Now you can't really debate with yourself. And so Abu Hanifa uses that to his advantage and he makes it so that as soon as the answer is given, this is the end of the conversation. For some people, this is sufficient. Because when you talk about a person, let's say you're talking about Jane and you're saying Jane has no talent. And someone says, well, what about Jane's extraordinary cooking ability? And you say, well, no, that doesn't really count. Well, if you're talking about Jane, you got to include all of Jane's various attributes. And if you're talking about God, you have to include all of God's attributes. God is the first and God is eternal. So when you ask the question, what came before God, you're actually asking what came before the first or what came before the eternal. And those questions simply answer themselves. And the answer is nothing. Now, if you're still asking questions, you might be saying, well, how do you know that God is eternal? For that, watch my previous video. I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you guys later.